This is a true story that happened to me, and even now I find it hard to believe. Back when I was in my third year of junior high school, my family consisted of my father, my mother, my younger brother, who was still in the lower grades of elementary school, and me, 4 of us in total. We had just finished watching the NHK Kohaku Utagassen, the red and white year-end singing contest, and gone to bed, thinking maybe we'd have some good first dreams of the new year. But late that night, I was jolted awake by a terrible nightmare, though I can't remember what the dream was about. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it, I was drenched in a cold sweat, and I felt as if ice-cold water had been poured down my back. I sprang up from my futon and just froze in that position. I remember thinking something like, seriously? A nightmare on New Year's Day? Ugh, this sucks, and there was no way I could get back to sleep. Thirsty, I headed to the living room where the fridge was. It was probably around 2 a.m., though I didn't check the clock. There, I found my entire family huddled together in front of the TV, even though it was the middle of the night. The TV was on, but since it was late, there shouldn't have been any programs on, yet some news program, my memory on this is fuzzy, was showing silently. On top of that, every single window in the house was wide open, so it was as cold inside as it was out. Their behavior was clearly strange. A chill ran down my spine. What the hell are you all doing? Are you nuts? I yelled at them, half in anger and half trembling. My brother said something like, but, His voice was so quiet I couldn't catch it, and then burst into tears. Seeing him cry, my parents, who had been silent and emotionless the entire time, closed all the windows, turned off the TV, and took my brother, who was curled up crying, off to the bedroom, telling him, "It's time for you to go to bed." Experiencing something that bizarre right at the start of the year made me too uneasy to sleep at all, so I spent the rest of the night in my room reading manga until morning. When morning came, I asked my parents, "What were you doing in the middle of the night last night?" And they just went, "Huh?" The difference between their completely blank faces in the night and the look of confusion they gave me now made me suspect I'd seen a ghost or something. I started to get pretty freaked out. But I figured if I told my friends about it, they'd just think I was making it up. Besides, I'd been dumped by my girlfriend in December, so I assumed my mental stress had gotten so bad I was hallucinating. I decided that was the most likely explanation. A while passed, and then one night, I woke up again from another nightmare. This time, I remembered it more clearly. I was being hit in the back of the head by someone I didn't know. Even after waking, I still felt a throbbing pain around my crown. For some reason, I had this odd idea, if I go to a convenience store, I'll be safe. All I could think was that I might be attacked by some ghost, and I freaked out and ran to the living room. But nobody was there. It smelled a bit like something had been burned, probably because we'd had grilled meat, yakiniku, for dinner. Remembering that strange event in the living room on New Year's night made me anxious, and once again, I couldn't sleep for the rest of the night. Then around the beginning of February, my body started to itch really badly. At first, I thought it was just dry skin, but my back and head felt especially hot, almost like they were burning, and I would scratch them until they hurt. The itching didn't get better at all, so I went to a dermatologist and got some ointment. That evening, after I took a bath, I was about to apply the medicine when my brother asked, "Let me put it on you," so I turned my back to him. But for some reason, he suddenly smacked me, hard, right on my back. It hurt so much that I yelled, "Knock it off." Since my brother always starts crying whenever I raise my voice at him, I could see tears welling up in his eyes. I thought, oh boy, here he goes. But the tears just streamed down his cheeks in silence. Strangely, his face seemed to lose all color, and soon he was just crying with an entirely blank expression, not making a sound. Feeling really creeped out, I looked over at my parents, and they were also crying silently with no expression. They were completely out of it. If I looked carefully, I could see their mouths moving just a little, but I couldn't tell what they were saying. It sounded like, "Ah. E." That was about all I could make out. Suddenly, everything around me turned bright red, then slowly faded into a sepia tone, and just as I felt like I was about to lose consciousness, the scene around me changed completely in an instant. I realized I was in my cousin's house, a place I recognized. My uncle was looking at me with a very serious expression. What? Why am I here? I couldn't make sense of what was happening. Before long, more and more people gathered around me. At first, I thought maybe everything until that moment had been a dream. But I had no idea how I'd ended up at my uncle's place. My grandparents were there too, and I was wrapped in bandages all over. I totally panicked. My grandfather said something like, If he doesn't remember, maybe it's better that way, but my uncle replied, "We have to tell him what happened. The person who did this still isn't caught, and the police will come back in about a week." Then my uncle told me the whole story. Apparently, on January 1st, someone had set fire to her house, burning it down completely. I'd happened to go out to a convenience store, so I escaped harm, but I saw someone who might have been the perpetrator and got hit in the back of the head, then beaten with a bat or something until I lost my memory. They took me to a hospital, where I was hovering between life and death for a while, but eventually I recovered and was taken in by my uncle. And now it was already March. I'd spent 2 months going through rehab with no memory, and at that very moment, my memories finally came back. I broke down crying. I had lost all those precious things, and I only realized it 2 months later. My grandparents and uncle watched me sob uncontrollably. My uncle looked away silently, and my grandparents cried along with me, tears streaming down all our faces. My whole body was covered in bruises, and I was wrapped up in so many bandages I looked like a mummy. Every time I moved a joint, I felt a painful twitch. I thought back to how, for some reason, all the windows in our house were wide open in the middle of winter, how my family had all been huddled together without any expression, how I had that nightmare of some stranger hitting me, and how everything suddenly turned red. It was like completing a jigsaw puzzle in my mind. Each piece clicked into place one after another. In the end, they never caught the arsonist. And when the bandages on my back were finally removed, I still had a bunch of bruises. But in the middle of them, there was one handprint-shaped patch of skin, my brother's hand, that had no injury at all. About 5 years later, as the bruises gradually faded, that handprint disappeared as well. Sorry this has been such a long-winded account, but I can't forget this incident. I don't think the story itself is necessarily scary, but thinking about how the culprit still hasn't been caught is what really terrifies me. Thank you for reading.